Classic Lucy resolution, confrontations, confessions, and the enduring heart of the Lucy show. I still feel a small protective ache when the cannon smoke clears and the check is placed in Mooney's hand. Even after all these years of late-night rewatching, the particular quiet that follows the loudest stunt in the composite still settles over me like a final necessary breath. Lucy has flown through the air for $250. She has balanced the books with her body. And now the long, chaotic journey that began with a real estate license and a little old lady from Cucamonga is allowed at last to come to rest. There is no grand confrontation in the final moments. The show has never needed one. The true confrontations have been happening all along in the locked apartment, when the apple became a moral battleground on the unfinished floor, when Lucy first accepted a hard hat with her name on it at the army gate, when she forced entire security protocol to make room for Carol Channing at the racetrack, when the torn ticket forced her to calculate the exact price of her own enthusiasm. By the time the cannon fires, every major relationship in the composite has already been tested, strained, and somehow deepened by the testing. What moves me most even after all these years is the way the composite refuses to tidy itself into a single moral. Lucy does not learn to stop scheming. Mooney does not learn to stop being rigid. Rosie does not permanently choose between the Countess and the working woman. Frank does not reappear to claim the soft beginning that was interrupted by turkey bones and construction schedules. The world of the show simply absorbs the disasters, pays out the necessary sums, and continues. The endurance is the point. I still feel protective of every one of them when I look back across the full arc. Rosie began the journey hungry and proud, clinging to a title that could no longer feed her. Lucy answered that hunger with a scheme so elaborate it locked 3 people inside a modern apartment for a weekend and sent her onto an 18th floor ledge with her eyes shut. The loyalty was absolute. The method was, as always, completely deranged. And yet the loyalty remains the brightest thread running through every subsequent disaster. When Lucy later destroys Mooney's ticket and then stuffs herself into a cannon to replace the money, she is still answering the same internal command that first made her invent a 90-year-old poker player from Cucamonga. The people she loves must not be left damaged if she can possibly prevent it. The cost to herself is irrelevant. Mooney's journey through the composite is quieter and in its way more moving. He begins as the man who hurries across town to protect a noblewoman from the indignity of commerce. He ends as the man who accepts a check earned by a woman who has just been fired out of a cannon on a pirate ship the bank happens to own. Between those 2 points he has been locked and lied to, forced to taste putty, compelled to watch Lucy risk her life on a ledge, and finally made the accidental beneficiary of a stunt that could have killed her. The fact that he never fully understands the chain of events that brought the money into his hands only makes the final image more tender. He has spent the entire composite trying to maintain order. Lucy has spent it proving that order is a luxury the heart cannot always afford. Somehow they are still standing in the same frame when the smoke clears. The romance with Frank remains the softest and most unresolved note. Those few minutes on the unfinished floor, the hard hat, the champagne, the toast to having their heads in the clouds still glow in my memory with a particular private light. The show does not punish the softness. It simply allows the larger machinery of work and exhaustion and family obligation to reclaim the evening the way it has always reclaimed Lucy's quieter hopes. The incompleteness feels honest. Not every beginning survives the ordinary week. The fact that the beginning existed at all is what the composite chooses to honor. The spy farce, for all its elaborate machinery of marshmallow cameras and blindfolds and men called him, ultimately serves the same emotional purpose as the locked apartment and the cannon. It is another stage on which Lucy can perform the role she is never fully granted in ordinary life, the person who sees clearly, who acts decisively, who matters inside a story larger than the next allowance check. That the entire operation turns out to be a misunderstanding only sharpens the poignancy. Lucy does not need the Cold War to be real in order to need a place inside it. The hunger to matter is real enough on its own. I still return to the domestic interludes, with a particular tenderness: the kitchen, the turkey, the paper bag, the karate nap, Mary Jane's noisy, complicated love. These sequences remind me that the grand disasters are only possible because Lucy has a life that keeps insisting on its own ordinary claims. She cannot live permanently on ledges or girders or pirate ships. The kitchen always reclaims her. The fact that she allows herself to be reclaimed again and again without bitterness is one of the quiet miracles of the character. When I look at the composite as a whole, what I see is not a series of disconnected plots but a single extended proof of Lucy Carmichael's particular moral geometry. She will create chaos in order to help the people she loves. She will then risk her body, her dignity and her safety in order to repair the chaos she has created. The cycle is endless, the love underneath it is not. That love is what has kept me sitting in the dark with this material for decades. It is what makes the laughter feel like something more than laughter. The mid-1960s were a time when American television was still learning how to hold both the joke and the ache in the same frame. The Lucy Show, at its best, never forgot the ache. Beneath every elaborate disguise and every physical stunt there is the steady pulse of a woman trying to keep her small circle of people from going under. Sometimes the methods are glorious. Sometimes they are terrifying. Sometimes they end with a woman being stuffed into a cannon so that a banker can have his $250 back. The consistency of the impulse is what endures. I still feel the protective ache when the final images fade. There is no speech that explains everything. There is no embrace that resolves the tensions. There is only the quiet knowledge that tomorrow Lucy will wake up and begin again, scheming, stumbling, locking people in, climbing out, falling a little bit in love with the sky, and then returning to the kitchen to see what ordinary damage the day has left for her to repair. The endurance of that pattern is the enduring heart of the show. What I carry away after all these years and all these late nights is not any single joke or any single stunt. It is the cumulative portrait of a woman whose love is larger than her common sense, whose courage is larger than her fear, and whose loyalty is larger than any disaster she can invent. The composite has taken her from a real estate license to a cannon's mouth, and at every point along the way she has remained recognizably, stubbornly, heartbreakingly herself. I still love her for it. I still wince in advance of the next scheme she has not yet imagined, especially then. Because the woman who would rather be shot from a cannon than leave a debt unpaid is the same woman who once looked at a hungry friend and decided that the only reasonable response was to become a 90-year-old poker player. From Cucamonga. The methods change. The heart does not. That heart is the reason I keep returning. It is the reason the protective ache never fully leaves me. And it is the reason that even now, when the last of the pirate set smoke has cleared and the check has been delivered and the ordinary world has begun to reassert itself, I sit for a long time in the dark, notebook closed at last, feeling quietly grateful that television once made room for a woman this reckless, this loyal, and this permanently gloriously unfinished.